Ladies and gentlemen, Priscilla Chan and Megan Smith.
Wow, so I get the chance to talk to one of my newer friends in the world who I love the handful of conversations we've started to have. And Priscilla, what I really love is that you're a doctor, you've taught, you come from such an interesting background, and you're taking that into the next wave of the foundation and what you want to achieve. And so we're going to talk about a couple different things and what you're doing in the foundation, but I actually wanted to start with you. Okay. And so can you talk a little bit about kind of your family and kind of your practice and some of the things that you've been up to that are really informing your work?
I'd love to. Thanks for having me here. I think the part about me that I think is important to put out there is that it's a miracle that I'm sitting here, having this conversation, having the privilege of having this conversation, because I'm the daughter of Chinese Vietnamese refugees that came to this country with nothing. And the systems that help families like mine don't work very well. And so I got through high school, was privileged enough to go to Harvard, and now a pediatrician because people cared. People invested in me and cared about my success. And so all my career, it's been about giving back. In college, I ran an after-school program in a low-income housing project, helping kids do their homework and be able to get to school. And I learned so much from that experience, is that helping with their homework wasn't going to get us anywhere. There were so many bigger problems to deal with. And so I spent a year teaching, but then I ultimately went to medical school. And now I'm a primary care doctor in San Francisco Safety Net Hospital. And in that seat, I care for families and children in San Francisco, but I can make those diagnoses and do as much as I can with a prescription pad, but I have no arms and legs into the community to actually meet the needs of these children and families. And so now I run a school. I started a school called the Primary School last fall, where it's addressing the systemic issues that prevent the families that I care for from being able to be successful. From the school side, as a teacher and an after-school leader, I realized kids can't be present at school because there's so much going on at home. They're sick, they're hungry, and school is the last thing on their mind. And as a pediatrician, I could diagnose all those things, but I wasn't in their everyday lives to actually address those issues. So at the primary school, we're weaving together the health component, working with their doctors and pediatricians, partnering with federally qualified health center, county services, with parents and parent empowerment, and then a high quality education.
It's brilliant, and what I love is you're doing it in a very specific, like one school, getting started, getting the feeling of that, and doing it with your real experience from being a doctor of what you're seeing people struggling with. I thought that I screen grabbed your, I don't know if they have it up here, that I screen grabbed your just your website for Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and I love the mission.
Yeah.
Right, this idea, advancing human potential and promoting equal opportunity. And I feel like people know your story less than Mark's, and of course we all as Facebook users and participants in the social media world, that he's really the revolutionary leader we understand him thinking that way, and I wanted people to hear how fundamental that is in your core, from the beginning. So say a little bit about how you guys are approaching things, because it resonated this morning. I talked to everybody about this idea of play the whole orchestra and making sure that all the disciplines and people are collaborating, including tech, but also all disciplines. And you guys have really taken that approach with the areas you've beginning to focus on.
Yeah, so right now at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, we're taking on two enormous issue areas. Education, where we're focused on personalized learning, and science, thinking about how we can build great tools for scientists to do even better science. But those fields are enormous. You know, we announced a $3 billion investment in science. Well, yearly, our government and industry invests $100 billion. And so, like, why would we matter at all? So we took a step back and really spent time thinking about what we can uniquely contribute to the space. And what we realized is, for me, it's a lot of that frontline experience of being a practitioner and having empathy for the issues that scientists, medical providers, teachers have, and being able to connect directly with people doing the work and what their issues are. And from Mark's perspective, he's had success building and scaling tools that connect billions of people worldwide. And how powerful would that be if we were to be able to connect that skill set with our empathy for the issues that we face? And so we've been building an engineering team to help address these important social problems. But we realized that, like I mentioned, we're tiny. So we need to be part of raising awareness, storytelling, building movements with everyday citizens, policymakers, industry, and really advocating for the issues that we care about. And so that toolbox isn't one thing. That toolbox ends up being how do we actually effectively communicate the great work that our partners do? How do we build great technology that scientists and teachers actually want to use? How do we use philanthropic dollars to actually support the great work that's happening out there that the market doesn't actually support effectively? And so we're still trying to figure it out. It's only been about a year, but we've learned a lot so far.
And as part of your founding, you wrote a letter to your daughter together. So talk a little bit about that. That was, it's a little more than a year ago, you know, as she was born. I guess she's 14 months. So just say a little bit about how you were thinking about that and talk about that tone and that idea.
Yeah. Writing that letter was a really amazing process. You know, my career has always been about service. Mark is inspired by the change that we could do for the world. That would be great if we actually we got a chance to work together. But the life-changing thing was waiting for our daughter, because we had what is an incredibly universal and important feeling of expecting a new life and the hopes and dreams that you have for that child, and that you want the world for them, and you want the world to be better than you could have ever imagined. And that was so powerful, not only because we were having that experience, is that we realized that every other parent has that experience. And so we need to start building that future now. And that letter documents the thought process that we went through in thinking about what we wanted to tackle and what we wanted the world to be like for our daughter Max and the others in her generation. And really inspired us to act in 2015, because we couldn't wait a day longer.
Yeah, amazing. So, yeah. And I love the universality of that feeling. So now you've got some of the team built. You guys, one of the things you said to me a little bit about the tools was, you know, on the microscope, for example, you know, these tools that can really enable lots of scientists. And so I really love that you have an engineering team that's incredible, you know, in philanthropy work. And so say a little bit about some of the different teams and the approaches. You have Jim Shelton, of course, has come to lead some of the education. He was the Deputy Secretary of Education, working with us, really insightful, fabulous guy.
Yeah, there's a couple examples that I'm really excited about. In education, Jim's been leading the work, and one of the projects that really brings together all the pieces, the whole toolbox, is our partnership with a group of schools called Summit Public Schools. That school holds a core belief that's pretty common in education, the belief that every child has unique needs and interests and pace that they need to progress at, but they are also aware that it's really hard. A teacher standing in front of 30 kids can't possibly know what every single one of those kids needs at that moment to reach their full potential. And so when we met the school, they had built a prototype of a tool that allowed both the student to know what they needed to do and learn next, and the teacher to know where they are and what to do next to nudge them. And we thought, this is amazing. We can actually bring something that we can contribute, engineering resources, to help build out this tool that is designed by teachers and addresses a problem that real educators face every day. And so we've dedicated an engineering team to help build out that tool, and it's gone from being a prototype at a handful of schools to serving students at over 100 schools. And we're still learning, we're still iterating, but it's a great example of us finding something in the early stage in the field that we care about, and being able to bring the resources of funding, of engineering, to actually make it so that more kids can benefit across the country from this tool. And then in science is earlier on. Corey Bargman is a excellent world-class neuroscientist who has joined us to help us build out our science work. And we're using a similar approach, that scientists know what they need, and we need to find the places where we can invest resources, engineering, to actually build out that next tool. And you brought up the example of a microscope. A microscope was a tool that lifted all boats in science and opened scientists' eyes to a whole new world that they didn't know existed. What's the next microscope that will unlock the next stage and evolution of science? And what we've been doing is talking to scientists and figuring out, like, what's that tool that's making your science really great, but that's built with like duct tape and gum? And how can we make it better so that more people can use that tool? And so one thing that we're working on right now is something called the Human Cell Atlas. We only know a tiny fraction of the cells in your body and what they're doing and how they work. But knowing that is super important to be able to address all disease, autism, lupus, depression. And so, but right now that information is scattered everywhere and not in a way that people can really use and understand. With the Human Cell Atlas, we're hoping to work with us scientists to actually gather that into a single place where you can analyze it, you can do deep dives, you can actually think about, okay, if that cell does this, maybe it has this effect in this disease that I care about. Or if you're designing therapeutics, you can say, oh, that's how that works? I can design a drug that actually helps solve the issues that we see in psoriasis. So that's one tool we're really excited about in science.
Yeah, one of the big challenges, the science world is incredible. The data, is in these silos.
Yeah.
And the tools they're good, but they're not extraordinary, and they're not the kind of tools that you see sort of in the open source kind of tech world where there's just rapid sharing.
Yeah.
And so the kind of ideas that you have, I think, are that microscope-like approaches. We did a lot of work with the president on the precision medicine initiative, or personalized health, and really being able to have data speak across in a way that protects privacy, but really lets us have the breakthroughs in science. Yeah. And in the summit work, what's so great in that particular school is it's a lot of times when people hear personalized learning or in computers and tech, they think somehow the computer's going to teach the children. And I think that's what's so incredible about the choice. We sometimes call it scout and scale, where you scout around for somebody who's got something and then figure out which you're accelerating them, like venture capitalists do, but in this way as a venture catalyst. Figuring out how the community of learning is almost scaffolded or facilitated by technology and the way that the Summit team is doing it, and making that work for a large amount of people, but in a very personal way. Mm-hmm. It's extraordinary, and it meets that human potential goal.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, if you walk into one of those schools, it's vibrant, and it feels like kids are really driving what's happening there, and so, yeah.
So you have such a pragmatic, you're Priscilla, she's the valedictorian for class. Like everywhere you go, you're doing extraordinary, you're just hitting it, at the top note, and then bringing this great humanity into your work. Do you have any advice for folks listening as they think about how to get involved in the way that you're doing this, thoughts that you might have about the pragmaticness of your approach, but together the really deep vision and the collaboration?
Yeah, I think, for me, it's the combination of thinking about the high level systems, like I talked about at the beginning, like how do we actually bring healthcare providers with teachers and actually build this beautiful net around every child so they can succeed? But that's great, and there's a lot of important think tank policy work that I enjoy doing, but the other half is just go do it and see what it's like and figure out what the problems are and what you need to actually solve for to reach that vision. And for me at the school, I remind people yeah, I'm working on integrating healthcare, data, early childhood education, parent empowerment, but on a day-to-day basis, where are the nap mats and does everyone know how to go to the potty? And if you need to deal with that before you can change the world. And that empathy is also incredibly important if you're actually in a place to make decisions that affect the way teachers, students, parents actually work and with the system and in the systems.
So we're out of time, but I just thank you for your leadership and your approach and exactly that kind of advice. And we're looking forward to, we're just over a year in, but where you guys are going to head and how we all can collaborate and get involved with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Priscilla. Yeah.